the past 2 years, human rights is 7, the lowest score on freedom from sex and labor trafficking to severe repression of faith communities. The Vietnamese government and the Communist Party is one of the worst world abusers of human rights. For too long, Vietnam has gotten a free pass on human rights. Diplomats are so focused on the fact that Vietnam is not China that this oppressive police state has granted trade and security benefits without conditionality. There's a silent human rights crisis going on in Vietnam that must be addressed. Human rights should be a top part of the meeting with President Trump's meeting next week with Vietnam's Prime Minister Nguyen Xuan Phuc. Doing so will advance U.S. economic and security interests, and above all, it will advance the cause of the people of Vietnam, who deserve better than the dictatorship that they are living under. The President has a real opportunity to bring about tangible reforms in Vietnam, and that is why we're meeting. The proximity of this hearing is precisely designed to try to let the President know how important it is he raise these issues robustly with the Prime Minister. I have been to Vietnam several times on human rights trips. I have met with advocates and young activists for decades, like imprisoned rights activist Nguyen Van Dam. I know there is a younger generation in Vietnam, 66% of who are under the age of 40, that looks to the U.S. as a land of opportunity and freedom. It forced renunciation
places that intimidate and harass citizens for nothing more. The Supreme Patriarch of the Unified. He was under house arrest then, 2 decades ago. And sadly, for all those years, he's been under arrest. Still persecuted by that communist government. And Dick Quang is not alone. The chairman mentioned Pastor Nguyen Con Chen. I've seen the photographs of the results of the beatings that he has taken at the hands of the police and the security apparatus. We've heard the pleas from his wife, and we saw the treatment meted out to her. So for 5 years now, he's remained behind bars on the questionable charges of undermining national security. What we call for today, and what I urge the administration to call for in this meeting with the Prime Minister, is respect for religious freedom. The Vietnamese Constitution provides for it. One must ask them why officials can obstruct and interfere with this constitutionally guaranteed right to worship freely. We must ask further that if this constitutional right can be ignored, what weight can we give any other constitutional or legal rights in Vietnam? I am pleased that the U.S.-Vietnam relations are building, and I hope for a stronger and more productive relationship between our countries. However, continued cooperation and improvements in our relationship must be predicated on a mutual respect for human rights and for the rule of law.
The committee keeps a very sharp focus on this matter. As you point out, first of all, we're holding this is dying. During my time in Congress, although there have been small, selective attempts to improve the human rights condition at times, we've also seen tremendous backsliding, and I would say right now, as was pointed out by my colleagues, I've not really seen any true improvement on the way the Vietnamese government deals with its and treats its own citizens. On religious freedom, as was pointed out, the government's record is especially troubling. I adopted the case of and I think both my colleagues have pointed out the case. I've adopted the case of Pastor Nguyen Con Chen, a Lutheran pastor in prison since 2012. I adopted his case as a prisoner of conscience through the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission. But what are we seeing? We're seeing pastors of the committee work very closely with him and in Hong Kong, where both people, Dr. Quan Nguyen, who is
he was left to go home, but he died in our house church in Dakar province. Was an bruises, and did that. His death was a reason. Most tragic was the death of UBCD, that is Unified Buddhist Church in Vietnam, which has been outlawed by the government of Vietnam for the past 42 years. On May 2nd, that is about 3 weeks ago, some 80 public security agents searched his home, Tan's home, without a search warrant. They collected receipts of money transfer from the US and a small piece of yellow cloth. Based on that, the public security charged that Tan had received money from reactionary forces abroad to work on a plan to fly the South Vietnamese flag in public someday. Actually, the receipts came from the monthly remittance were brought inside. Tan's older sister, the one who arrived in town from Savannah yesterday, by none other than Sun Group. This would give the appearance that the U.S.
The situation in Vietnam is ripe for transformation. Spirit, I would like to draw attention to the important issue of religious freedom. To the government of Vietnam, religion is opium, and the Hanoi government's policy has always been to repress religious freedom. There's an unfortunate misconception from the West that the mere existence of churches and temples in Vietnam implies that there is freedom of religion. That is far from the truth. Per the latest report of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, the religious freedom in Vietnam has deteriorated significantly. The Vietnamese Communist views decrease inside the church have to be accepted by the government. Even if the Vatican wants to appoint a new cardinal or bishop, it needs to inform and get approval from the Vietnamese government. So at the end of every year, each church is required to notify the local government of its detailed plans for the next year, such as the dates and times of events being held, what are the purpose, and how many people will attend. Bishop of Kongtung Patriarch Hoàng Bích Quan Do, Pastor Nguyễn Công Chính, and several placed under house arrest. The properties belong to the Catholic and Buddhist churches. Last year, the pressure Lim Ji Temple to stop activities and to sell lands to the local government for a development project. The local government also pressured the Fathers of Redemptorist Vietnam, Dòng Chúa Cứu Thế Vietnam, to stop his healthcare program for the veterans of the South. In light of this religious freedom violation, the U.S. government should push for a following course of action. The Vietnamese government should implement UN's principles on religious freedom, including the release of those imprisoned for beliefs and practices, and fully restore the rights of citizenship, property, and residence permits. The Vietnamese government should stop repressing indigenous religions such as Khao Pa and Cao Ca. They should also stop promoting the state church to interfere with the Buddhist and Catholic religions. Later, on November 18, 2016, the National Assembly finally ratified the law of belief and religion, even with the extensive criticism from human rights and religious groups. In fact, in an open letter to the Vietnamese government prior to the ratification of the law, a number of organizations and lawmakers reject a clause stating that, quote, religious groups must be registered and approved by the government in order to practice, end quote. Finance the U.S. government as a trusted reliable.
Again, the reason and the proximity of
Because this is the sister of how this one died. And they only threatened the rest brothers of the deceased. Yeah, very intense pressure on Vietnam right
and everything else.
They cannot leave their home because so fearful that they would be attacked.
So they retaliate against a 9-year-old.
Everyone. Yeah, was very traumatized. Very traumatized by the death of his dad. He couldn't understand why his dad died or something like that.
Dạ, nói là tại sao ba của nó mới bắt đi một ngày qua ngày sau chết rồi.
He couldn't understand why his dad
rồi ba
just
của nó
died the day after being taken to the police station.
Má nó là không có dám cho đi học, sợ nó nói tầm bậy tầm bạ
Oh,
đó rồi
and-
bị giết chết.
And her mom dare not let her him go to school because she's afraid that he would say something wrong.
Giống như là không có trực tiếp mà gián tiếp là
Having committed crimes
cũng quản giống như người
out of
khùng.
Vietnam.
Ba em
Out of Vietnam.
ba em 7 mấy
For
mẹ
sake,
bắt.
she doesn't want any other member of family the same.
Dạ,
The same.
I don't want my family die no more. For all my family come here.
Good. Okay.
Lúc đó là em xin cảm ơn có tiếng
Oh, I just make that. Here, this is better. Here, this is better. This is better. Choose.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So good you did that. Thank you very much. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Ủa còn nhiều người. Ủa còn nhiều người nữa. 3.
Xin lỗi chị Bùi Thiên Huệ.
I'm just kidding.
That's.
Oh, we
Many of them come from our Buddhist community around here from Britain.
see how.
He's very strong.
But as usual, great job. He's made the difference. You know, there was no hyperbole, there was no false. You know, you always have to be worried that somebody might exaggerate something to try to get your attention out of you. And I think that's never been lost on the government either. The stuff we bring forward, we know it's real. So that makes a difference too. So thank you.
Thank you.
And any questions?
Well, so I was wondering, so you mentioned that for the upcoming trip, we're going to focus on the CPC list as a priority.
Yes.
right?
One of the
One of the
priorities,
priorities. So then, how can we, so Mr. Kumar had indicated to you that beyond just the hearing, we have somehow we have to have a continuing
Oh, yes.
platform.
Definitely.
So do you have any
Well, there's,
informal ways so that I could learn more about that? This is where I'm coming in and trying to understand. that
well, I think
process.
meetings, you know, with top people at the White House and state is always important. When the new ambassador at large gets a concern.
Mhm.
And so, one way, but I think it's really embracing the Asian affairs for all the state, which I find very disturbing.
To listen to his opening statement.
And with, I'm the chairman of the Helsinki Commission on related matter, which is Vietnam. Because
So thank you very much. And they know that we know now.
yeah,
We know now.
yeah.
Everyone knows
And
now.
I think they have.
They keep the bullet keep in the house for 30
Okay.